The rope burned against Elena's wrists as she stood on the wooden platform, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. Below her, a crowd of leering faces bid on her future as if she were livestock at market. Her parents hadn't even stayed to watch. They'd taken their money and disappeared into the night, leaving her to face this nightmare alone. 2,500, called out a man with gold teeth and wandering eyes. 3,000, countered another, his voice slurred with whiskey. Elena closed her eyes, trying to block out the nightmare. At 19, she'd thought her biggest worry would be finishing her studies, maybe finding work in town. Instead, her father's gambling debts had sealed her fate. The debt collectors had given her family an ultimatum: pay up or hand over their daughter to work off what was owed. 4,000. The new voice cut through the crowd like a blade deep, commanding, and somehow different from the others. Ali's eyes snapped open to find the speaker. He stood apart from the rest, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a black Stetson that shadowed his features. Unlike the other men who leered and jeered, he watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something in his dark eyes, not the predatory hunger she'd seen in the others, but something else entirely. Going once at 4,000. The auctioneer began. 8,000. The rancher's voice rang out clear and firm, doubling the bid without hesitation. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Elena's heart stuttered. $8,000 more than double what her father owed. 8,000 going once. Going twice. The auctioneer's gavel seemed to hang in the air forever before it came down with a decisive crack. Sold to Mr. Cade Brennan. The crowd began to disperse, grumbling about the unexpected turn of events. Elena's legs nearly gave out as the reality hit her. She belonged to this stranger, now this man who'd paid a fortune for her without even knowing her name. Cade Brennan approached the platform with measured steps, his expression unreadable. Up close, she could see the weathered lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. He was older than she'd first thought, maybe 35, and there was something about him that spoke of hard-won wisdom and quiet strength. "Easy there," he said softly, as she swayed on her feet. His voice was gentler now, meant only for her ears. "You're safe now." Safe? Elena almost laughed at the absurdity. She'd have just been sold like a piece of property. How could she possibly be safe? But as Cade reached up to help her down from the platform, his touch was careful, respectful. He didn't grab or manhandle her like she'd expected. Instead, he steadied her with one strong hand, while the other worked to untie the ropes at her wrists. "My name's Cade," he said, his fingers gentle as they worked the knots free. "And you won't be hurt while you're under my protection. I give you my word." Elena rubbed her freed wrists, staring up at this enigmatic man who'd just changed her life with a single bid. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you pay so much?" Cade settled his hat more firmly on his head and offered her his arm. "Because some things are worth more than money, miss, and everyone deserves a chance at something better." As they walked away from the auction block together, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. The wagon wheels creaked rhythmically as they rolled through the dusty countryside, putting miles between Elena and the nightmare of the auction. She sat stiffly beside Cade, hyper-aware of his presence, despite the respectful distance he maintained between them. Her mind raced with questions, but fear kept her silent. "Are you hungry?" Cade asked, breaking the tension that had stretched between them for the past hour. Elena's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, betraying her. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her parents hadn't bothered with such luxuries before handing her over. Yes, she admitted quietly. Without a word, Cade pulled the wagon to a stop beneath a cluster of oak trees. From a leather satchel, he produced bread, cheese, and a flask of water. "It's not much, but it'll do until we reach the ranch." Elena accepted the food gratefully, trying not to appear too eager despite her hunger. As she ate, she stole glances at her new owner. He sat relaxed but alert, his eyes scanning the horizon with the practiced gaze of a man accustomed to watching for trouble. "You don't have to be afraid to speak," Cade said, without looking at her. "I'm not going to hurt you for asking questions. What do you want from me?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Cade turned to study her face, his expression thoughtful. "What do you think I want?" Elena's cheeks burned. I know what men usually want when they buy a woman. I'm not most men." His voice was steady. "I have a ranch to run, and I need help. My housekeeper, Mrs. Riley, is getting on in years. She could use an extra pair of hands. That's all." Elena couldn't hide the skepticism in her voice. "That's all." Cade's eyes never wavered from hers. You'll have your own room, regular meals, and a fair wage for your work. After a year, you'll have earned enough to buy your freedom and go wherever you choose. Alina stared at him, searching for the lie, the trap, the cruel joke. But his eyes held only sincerity. Why would you do that? You paid $8,000. For me. Cade was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. I had a sister once. She was about your age when she got herself into trouble with the wrong man. By the time I found her, it was too late to help. His jaw tightened. Maybe this is my chance to do right by someone else's sister. The simple honesty in his words made Elena's throat tight. What was her name? Sarah? The name came out rough, weighted with old grief. She had your spirit, your fire. She deserved better than what she got. They sat in comfortable silence after that, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Elena finished her meal slowly, processing this unexpected turn her life had taken. For the first time since her parents' betrayal, she felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Tell me about the ranch, she said finally. Cade's face brightened slightly. It's called the Double Beebin in my family, for 3 generations. We run cattle mostly, some horses. It's hard work, but honest work. The land's beautiful rolling hills, clear streams, mountains in the distance. On a clear day, you can see for miles. Alina tried to imagine it. This place that would be her home for the next year. How many people work there? Besides Mrs. Riley and myself, there are 4 ranch hands. Good men, all of them. They've been with me for years. Cade's expression grew more serious. They'll treat you with respect, or they'll answer to me. You have my word on that. As they resumed their journey, Alina found herself studying Cade's profile. There was something about him, a quiet strength, a fundamental decency, that made her want to trust him despite everything she'd been through. He could have taken advantage of a situation, could have demanded anything he wanted. Instead, he'd offered her something she'd never expected, hope for a future. The sun was beginning to set when they crested a hill, and Alina got her first glimpse of the Double B Ranch. The main house was larger than she'd expected, built of stone and timber with a wide front porch. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. Welcome home, Cade said softly, and for the first time in days, Alina allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things might actually be all right. The front door of the ranch house opened before they'd even reached the porch steps, and a woman emerged, who could only be Mrs. Riley. She was small and round, with silver hair pinned neatly beneath a white cap, and keen blue eyes that missed nothing. Her flour-dusted apron suggested she'd been baking, and the warm, yeasty smell that drifted from the doorway made Elena's mouth water. Cade Brennan, you're later than you said you'd be, Mrs. Riley scolded, though her tone held more affection than reproach. I was beginning to worry. Her sharp gaze shifted to Alina, taking in her rumpled dress and the faint rope marks still visible on her wrists. And this must be our new helper. Alina, meet Mrs. Riley, Cade said, helping Alina down from the wagon. She's been running this household longer than I've been alive, and she's the best cook in 3 counties. Mrs. Riley's stern expression softened slightly. Well, don't just stand there gawking, child. Come inside. You look half-starved and completely done in. She turned to Cade. You can see to the horses. I'll get this girl settled. Alina found herself ushered into a warm, welcoming kitchen that smelled of fresh bread and simmering stew. The room was spotless but lived in, with copper pots hanging from hooks and herbs drying from the rafters. A large wooden table dominated the center of the space, scarred from years of use, but polished to a warm gleam. Sit, Mrs. Riley commanded, ladling stew into a bowl and setting it before Alina, along with a thick slice of bread. Eat first, talk later. That's my rule. Alina obeyed, too hungry and overwhelmed to protest. The stew was rich and hearty, filled with tender beef and vegetables. It was the best meal she'd had in months, and she had to force herself to eat slowly, instead of wolfing it down. Mrs. Riley busied herself around the kitchen, stealing glances at Alina as she worked. How old are you, child? 19, Alina answered between spoonfuls. Same age as my granddaughter. Mrs. Riley's expression grew thoughtful. Can you cook? Clean? So, some Alina admitted. My mother taught me the basics before, ... She trailed off, not wanting to relive the painful memories. Before she let your father sell you to pay his debts. Mrs. Riley finished bluntly. Yes, Cade told me about the situation. Shameful, if you ask me. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not trade them away like cattle. Elena's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. You know about the auction? Course I know. Not much happens in this valley that doesn't reach my ears eventually. Mrs. Riley sat down across from Elena, her expression kind but serious. What I want to know is whether you're planning to make trouble for us. Trouble? Elena was genuinely confused. Some folks might be bitter about their circumstances. Might think about running off, or causing problems out of spite. Mrs. Riley's blue eyes studied Elena intently. Are you one of those folks? Elena considered the question carefully. I don't know, she said honestly. Everything's happened so fast, I haven't had time to think about much of anything. But Mr. Brennan seems different than I expected. And you've been kinder to me in the past hour than my own parents were in the last month. Mrs. Riley's expression softened. Good honesty is a rare thing these days. I appreciate it. She stood and began clearing away Elena's empty bowl. Now, let me show you to your room. You'll be sharing the upstairs with my rooms at the front of the house. Yours is at the back. You'll have privacy and a good view of the mountains. Elena followed Mrs. Riley up a narrow staircase to the second floor. The older woman opened a door at the end of the hall, revealing a small but comfortable room with a single bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the rolling hills Cade had described. It's not fancy, Mrs. Riley said, but it's clean, and it's yours. There's a change of clothes in the wardrobe. They belonged to Cade's sister. Should fit you well enough. Elena's breath caught. His sister? But I thought, she died 5 years ago, Mrs. Riley said gently. But before that, she lived here with us for a time. Cade's been saving her things. Couldn't bear to get rid of them. Maybe it's time they were put to good use. Elena touched the simple quilt that covered the bed, overwhelmed by the generosity of these virtual strangers. Why is everyone being so kind to me? Mrs. Riley smiled, her weathered face creasing into warm lines. Because kindness is what separates us from the animals, child. And because everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. She patted Elena's shoulder. Get some rest now. Tomorrow we'll start teaching you the routine around here. And don't worry, things are going to get better. As Mrs. Riley closed the door behind her, Elena sank onto the bed and allowed herself to cry for the first time since her ordeal began. But for the first time in weeks, her tears weren't born of despair. They were tears of relief, and perhaps even hope. Elena woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the distant lowing of cattle. Sunlight streamed through her window, painting golden rectangles across the wooden floor. For a moment, she lay still, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, before the events of the previous day came flooding back. She dressed quickly in one of Sarah's dresses, a simple blue calico that fit her surprisingly well, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was already bustling with activity. Mrs. Riley stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced efficiency, while Cade sat at the table reading a newspaper and drinking coffee. Morning, he said, looking up as she entered. Sleep? Well, yes, thank you. Elena was still getting used to simple kindness, the way he asked about her comfort, as if her answer actually mattered. Sit down, child, Mrs. Riley called over her shoulder. Breakfast is almost ready. Hope you're hungry. We start early around here. Elena took a seat across from Cade, acutely aware of his presence. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly: the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar, the calluses on his hands that spoke of years of hard work. I thought I'd show you around the ranch today, Cade said, folding his newspaper. Help you get your bearings before you start working. Mrs. Riley set a plate of golden pancakes before Elena, along with butter and syrup. Don't let him work you too hard on your first day, she warned. Man's got no sense when it comes to pacing himself or anyone else. I heard that, Cade replied with a slight smile, the first genuine smile Elena had seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look younger and more approachable. After breakfast, Cade led Elena outside into the crisp morning air. The ranch was even more impressive in daylight, sprawling and well-maintained, with a kind of attention to detail that spoke of pride in ownership. We'll start with the barn, Cade said, leading her toward a large structure painted red, with white trim. Most of the workhorses are kept here, along with my personal mounts. The barn was clean and well-organized, filled with the comfortable sounds of horses moving in their stalls. Elena had always loved horses, and she couldn't help but smile as several curious heads poked out to greet them. This is Thunder, Cade said, stopping before a magnificent black stallion. He's my primary mount. Been with me for 8 years now. He reached into his pocket and produced a carrot, which the horse accepted with gentle lips. And this beauty here is Moonbeam. She's the gentlest mare I've ever owned. The white horse whickered softly as Alina tentatively reached out to stroke her nose. She's beautiful. She was Sarah's horse, Cade said quietly. No one's ridden her since. Well, since Sarah died. Elena's hand stilled on the horse's neck. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's all right. Cade's voice was gentle but firm. Sarah loved this horse, and she'd be happy to know someone was appreciating her again. Do you ride? A little. My father had a horse before he sold it to pay for his gambling. Elena's voice grew bitter at the memory. Would you like to learn properly? I could teach you. Elena looked up at him in surprise. You'd do that? Why not? It's a useful skill out here, and Moonbeam needs the exercise. Cade moved to the next stall. These are the workhorses, draft animals mostly. They pull the wagons and help with the heavy work. They continued through the barn, with Cade explaining the purpose of each animal and the daily routines involved in their care. Elena found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about feeding schedules and grooming techniques. You're a quick learner, Cade observed, as they moved on to tour the other outbuildings. Mrs. Riley will appreciate that. I want to earn my keep, Elena said seriously. I don't want to be a burden. Cade stopped walking and turned to face her. Elena, you're not a burden. What happened to you? What your parents did, it wasn't your fault. You don't owe anyone anything, except basic respect and honest work. Elena felt tears prick her eyes at his words. It's hard to believe that when everyone I trusted betrayed me. Not everyone, Cade said gently. Mrs. Riley and I were not going to hurt you, and neither are my men. Give us a chance to prove that. As they walked back toward the house, Elena found herself stealing glances at this man who'd literally bought her freedom. He was nothing like what she'd expected, not the cruel master she'd feared, but someone who seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being. Cade, she said as they reached the porch. Yes. Thank you. For yesterday, for this morning, for everything. I know I haven't been very gracious, but I'm grateful. Cade's expression softened. You don't need to thank me for treating you like a human being, Elena. That should be a given. But, as Elena watched him walk away to tend to ranch business, she realized that what should be a given was, for her, an unexpected gift, and for the first time since her parents' betrayal, she felt like maybe she could learn to trust again. 3 weeks into her new life, Elena had settled into a routine that felt both foreign and oddly comforting. She woke before dawn to help Mrs. Riley prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, spent her mornings cleaning and organizing the house, and her afternoons learning the countless tasks that kept the ranch running smoothly. Mrs. Riley had proven to be an exacting but fair teacher, showing Elena how to manage a household that fed 6 hungry men 3 times a day. There was laundry to be done, bread to be baked, and 100 other tasks that Elena had never fully appreciated until she was responsible for them. You're getting quicker with that bread, Mrs. Riley observed, watching Elena knead dough with practiced motions. Won't be long before you can do it without thinking. Elena smiled, flour dusting her cheek. I never thought I'd enjoy cooking so much. My mother always made it seem like such a chore. Anything can be a chore if you approach it with the wrong attitude, Mrs. Riley replied sagely. But feeding people, taking care of them, that's one of life's purest satisfactions. Through the kitchen window, Elena could see Cade working with one of the horses in the corral. Over the past few weeks, she'd begun to understand the careful balance of strength and gentleness that made him such an effective rancher. He was firm, but never harsh, demanding, but always fair. He's been different since you arrived, Mrs. Riley said, following Elena's gaze. Different how? Lighter, somehow. More like the man he was before. ... Double quotes. Mrs. Riley trailed off, then shook her head. Well, before life dealt him some hard blows. He's been carrying guilt over Sarah's death for 5 years now. Maybe helping you is helping him heal too. Elena felt a flutter of something warm in her chest. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too, something she wasn't quite ready to name. That afternoon, as promised, Cade took her out to the corral to work with Moonbeam. The mare had grown accustomed to Elena's presence over the past weeks, often coming to the fence when she saw her approaching. First rule of riding, Cade said, handing Elena a brush. Always start with grooming. It builds trust between horse and rider. Elena ran the brush along Moonbeam's neck in long, smooth strokes, enjoying the feel of the horse's warm muscles beneath her hands. She's so gentle. Sarah always said Moonbeam could sense people's hearts, Cade replied, checking the saddle. She was never wrong about a person's character. What was Sarah like? Elena asked, then immediately regretted the question. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's all right. I don't mind talking about her. Cade's voice was soft with memory. She was stubborn, independent, too quick to trust people who didn't deserve it. But she had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. She'd have liked you. Alina felt tears prick her eyes. I wish I could have known her. She was a lot like you, actually. Same spirit, same strength. She just... ... She fell in love with the wrong man. A gambler who made big promises and delivered nothing but heartbreak. Cade's jaw tightened. By the time she realized what he really was, she was too proud to come home. Too ashamed to admit she'd been wrong. What happened to her? She died. In a fire in a boarding house in Denver. Alone, broke, and far from everyone who loved her. Cade's voice was rough with old grief. I've spent 5 years wondering if I could have done something different. Said something that would have brought her home. Alina placed a gentle hand on his arm. You can't blame yourself for her choices, can't I? Cade looked at her with haunted eyes. I was her big brother. I was supposed to protect her. You were also just a person, not a miracle worker. Sometimes people have to make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. Just like I had to learn that not everyone who claims to love you actually does. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own painful memories. Then Cade cleared his throat and stepped back, ready to try mounting. He asked Art. Elena nodded, grateful for the change of subject. Cade helped her up onto Moonbeam's back, his hand steady and reassuring as he guided her through the basics of seat and posture. The mare stood patiently, occasionally turning her head to check on her new rider. Relax, Cade coached, walking beside them as Moonbeam began a slow walk around the corral. Let yourself move with her rhythm. Don't fight it. Alina gradually loosened her death grip on the reins, allowing herself to feel the horse's gentle gait. It was terrifying and exhilarating. At the same time, this sense of controlled power beneath her, the wind in her hair, the freedom of movement. You're a natural, Cade said, and Alina could hear the smile in his voice. Sarah always said this mare was a good judge of character. As they continued their lesson, Alina found herself watching Cade as much as she was concentrating on riding. There was something about the way he moved, the quiet confidence he radiated, that drew her like a moth to flame. She was beginning to understand that her feelings for him were growing beyond simple gratitude. But she was also beginning to understand that those feelings were dangerous. She was his employee, bought and paid for. He'd been kind to her, kinder than anyone had been in months. But that didn't mean he saw her as anything more than a charitable project. Still, as Moonbeam carried her around the corral with Cade's encouraging voice guiding her, Alina allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to belong here, not as a debt to be worked off, but as someone who was truly wanted. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a dust-covered rider who wouldn't meet Alina's eyes. She signed for it with trembling hands. Recognizing her father's crude handwriting on the envelope, Mrs. Riley took one look at her face and immediately shooed her into the parlor away from the breakfast preparations. Elena's hands shook as she read the short, brutal message. Her father had lost even more money, gambling, and the new creditors were demanding payment. They knew about the auction, knew about the arrangement with Cade Brennan. They wanted Alina back, along with the money Cade had paid for her. We'll be coming for you within the week, the letter concluded. Be ready. Alina sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The warm, safe world she'd been building around herself crumbled like a house of cards. She'd been foolish to think she could escape her past, foolish to believe she could have a future worth living. Alina. Cade's voice came from the doorway, sharp with concern. What's wrong? She looked up at him through tears. She didn't realize she was crying. They're coming for me. The new creditors. They want me back. Cade crossed the room in 3 quick strides, taking the letter from her nerveless fingers. His face grew darker with each word he read. Over my dead body, he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice that made Elena's breath catch. You don't understand, Elena whispered. These aren't the same men who sold me before. These are dangerous people. They won't take no for an answer. Neither will I. Cade knelt before her chair, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Alina, look at me. You're not going anywhere with these men. You're under my protection now. But the money. I don't care about the money. I care about you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning that neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Mrs. Riley appeared in the doorway, her face grim. I heard raised voices. What's happening? Cade quickly explained the situation, while Alina sat frozen, her mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. She'd brought danger to these kind people, put them at risk because of her family's sins. I should go, she said suddenly, standing on unsteady legs. I should go with them when they come. It's not fair to put you and Mrs. Riley in danger because of my problems. Absolutely not, Cade said firmly. We're not having this conversation. But they might hurt you. Alina. Cade's voice was gentle but implacable. I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever. Do you understand me? The intensity in his eyes made her heart race. There was something there, something that went beyond mere protectiveness or charity, something that made her dare to hope. I understand, she whispered. Good. Cade stood and turned to Mrs. Riley. Send word to the hands. I want everyone armed and ready. And send a message to Sheriff Morrison in town. Tell him we might need backup. Mrs. Riley nodded grimly. Already planned on it. Nobody threatens my family and gets away with it. Family. The word hit Alina like a physical blow. That's what she'd become to these people, not an employee or a charity case, but family. The realization brought fresh tears to her eyes. The week that followed was tense with anticipation. The ranch hands took turns standing watch, and Alina was never allowed to venture outside alone. Cade had moved his bedroll into the parlor, claiming he wanted to be close to the front door, but Alina suspected he was also positioning himself between her and any potential threat. The waiting was almost worse than the original fear. Alina found herself jumping at every sound, her nerves stretched to the breaking point. She tried to maintain her normal routine, but even simple tasks like cooking and cleaning felt surreal when she might be torn away from this life at any moment. It was Mrs. Riley who finally broached the subject that had been hovering unspoken between them all week. You're in love with him, she said simply. As they worked together in the kitchen on Friday evening, Elena's hands stilled on the dough. She was kneading. I what? Don't play coy with me, child. I've got eyes. The way you look at him, the way you light up when he walks into a room, it's written all over your face. Elena's cheeks burned. It doesn't matter how I feel. He's my employer. He paid for me. Any feelings I have are just gratitude mixed up with loneliness. Hogwash. Mrs. Riley's voice was brisk. And what about the way he looks at you? The way he's been pacing like a caged wolf all week at the thought of losing you. He's protective by nature. He'd do the same for anyone. Would he now? Mrs. Riley's eyes twinkled with mischief. Then explain to me why he's been asking about engagement rings in town. Elena's heart stopped. What? Tom Miller at the general store mentioned it to me. Said Cade had been inquiring about special ordering a ring from back east. Seems he's got someone in mind he wants to propose to. Elena sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. He's going to propose. To whom? Mrs. Riley just smiled and patted Elena's shoulder. Sometimes the most obvious answer is the right one, child. Now, don't you think it's time you stopped pretending you don't care about each other? Before Elena could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats echoed from outside. Multiple horses, riding hard. Elena's blood turned to ice as she recognized the sound. She'd been dreading all week. They had come for her. The thundering of hoofbeats stopped just outside the ranch house, followed by the jingle of spurs and the low murmur of male voices. Elena's hands clenched into fists as she fought the urge to run upstairs and hide. Instead, she moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the group of men dismounting in the yard. There were 5 of them, all armed and dangerous. The leader was a tall, thin man with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. Even from a distance, Elena could see the violence that radiated from him, like heat from a fire. These weren't men who would be reasoned with or bought off. They were predators, and they'd come to collect what they saw as their property. Elena, get away from the window. Cade's voice was low and urgent as he entered the room, a rifle in his hands. Mrs. Riley, I want you upstairs. Now. I'm not leaving. Elena started to protest. You're not leaving, period. Cade cut her off. But I need you out of the line of fire. Please. The desperate edge in his voice made Elena nod and step back from the window. Mrs. Riley squeezed her shoulder as she passed, heading for the stairs. I'll be right up here if you need me, she whispered. A sharp knock echoed through the house, more of a demand than a request. Cade checked his rifle one last time and moved to the door. Stay behind me, he told Elena. No matter what happens, stay behind me. Cade opened the door to reveal the thin man Elena had seen from the window. Up close, his face was even more menacing, scarred and weathered by years of violence. His pale eyes fixed on Elena immediately, and she suppressed a shudder. Mr. Brennan, I presume. The man's voice was smooth, almost pleasant. My name is Vincent Carver. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't believe I do, Cade replied evenly. Alina is here of her own free will. Carver's laugh was like broken glass. Free will? How quaint. The girl's father owes me $15,000, plus interest. She's collateral, pure and simple. Her father's debts aren't her responsibility, Cade said. And I have legal papers, showing I purchased her contract from the original creditors. Ah, but you see, those original creditors owed me money too. When they couldn't pay, I took over all their assets, including the girl. Carver's smile was reptilian. I'm afraid your purchase wasn't valid. The girl belongs to me now. Alina felt the blood drain from her face. She'd been so foolish to think she could escape. There would always be another debt, another creditor, another reason why she couldn't be free. I don't care about your legal claims, Cade said, his voice deadly calm. Alina stays here. I was hoping you'd be reasonable, Carver sighed. But I suppose we'll have to do this the hard way. He gestured to his men, who began to fan out around the porch. You're outnumbered, Mr. Brennan. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're the one who's outnumbered, came a new voice from the side of the house. Alina turned to see Jake, one of the ranch hands, stepping into view with his rifle raised. You're on our land now, and you're not welcome. More figures emerged from strategic positions around the yard, the other ranch hands, all armed and ready. Alina's heart swelled with gratitude and something deeper as she realized. These men were willing to risk their lives for her. Carver's confident smile faltered slightly as he took in the situation. This is a private matter between me and the girl. You don't want to get involved in this. Too late for that, said Tom, the oldest of the ranch hands. Elena's family now. We protect our own. And there's one more thing you should know, Cade added, his voice carrying across the yard. I sent word to Sheriff Morrison 3 days ago. He should be arriving with his deputies any minute now. As if summoned by his words, the sound of approaching horses echoed from the road. Alina felt a surge of hope as she recognized the sheriff's uniform among the riders cresting the hill. Carver's face darkened with rage. This isn't over, Brennan. I'll be back with more men, and I'll burn this place to the ground if I have to. You're welcome to try, Cade replied. But I should warn why I have friends in high places. Federal marshals who take a dim view of human trafficking. Push this too far, and you'll find yourself facing charges that will put you away for life. The sheriff and his deputies rode into the yard, their badges gleaming in the afternoon sun. Problem here, Cade? Sheriff Morrison asked, his hand resting casually on his pistol. Mr. Carver here was just leaving, Cade replied. He seems to have gotten confused about property ownership. Sheriff Morrison's eyes narrowed as he studied Carver and his men. Vincent Carver, I've been looking for you. There's a warrant out for your arrest in 3 counties. Something about fraud and extortion. Carver's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Boys, I think it's time Mr. Carver and his friends came with us. We've got some questions to ask them. Alina watched in amazement as the tables turned completely. Carver and his men found themselves outnumbered and outgunned, their threats reduced to empty bluster in the face of legitimate authority. This isn't over, Carver snarled at Alina as the deputies moved to arrest him. I'll find a way to collect what's owed to me. No, you won't, Cade said firmly, because Alina isn't property to be collected. She's a free woman, and she's under my protection. Anyone who wants to hurt her will have to go through me first. Alina felt tears stream down her face at his words. For the first time in months, she truly believed she might be safe. As the sheriff led Carver and his men away, she turned to thank the ranch hands who had risked their lives for her. Thank you, she whispered to Jake. All of you. I don't know how to repay you. Nothing to repay, Jake replied gruffly. Like Tom said, your family now. That's what families do. As the dust settled and the immediate danger passed, Alina found herself alone with Cade on the porch. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard, and she could hear Mrs. Riley clattering around in the kitchen, probably preparing a celebratory dinner. Is it really over? She asked quietly. It's over, Cade confirmed. Carver won't be bothering anyone for a long time. And even if he tries to send someone else, they'll have to deal with federal authorities. I meant what I said about having friends in high places, Alina nodded, still struggling to process everything that had happened. I almost ran, she admitted. When I saw them coming, I almost ran away, to protect all of you. I know, Cade said softly. That's what makes you brave, Alina. You were willing to sacrifice yourself for people you care about. People I care about, she repeated slowly. Yes, I suppose I do care about all of you. More than I ever thought possible. Cade stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. Alina, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said weeks ago. Alina's heart began to race. What is it? I'm in love with you, he said simply. Not because I bought you, not because I pity you, but because of who you are. Your strength, your courage, your kindness. You've changed everything for me. Alina felt the world tilt around her. Cade, I know it's complicated, he continued. I know the circumstances of how we met make this difficult. But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just protectiveness or charity. I love you, Alina, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you're worth more than any debt, any price anyone could ever put on you. Elena's tears fell freely now, but they were tears of joy rather than fear. I love you too, she whispered. I've been trying to convince myself it was just gratitude, but it's so much more than that. You saved me, Cade, not just from those men, but from believing I was worthless. Cade cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You were never worthless, Alina. You're priceless. And if you'll have me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life showing you just how precious you are. Is that a proposal? Alina asked, her heart soaring. It's a promise, Cade replied. A promise that you'll never have to face anything alone again. That you'll always have a home, a family, and someone who loves you unconditionally. Alina stood on her toes and kissed him softly, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. I accept, she whispered. All of it. The promise, the proposal, the life you're offering me. Then let's go tell Mrs. Riley, Cade said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She's been waiting for this moment almost as long as I have. As they walked into the house together, Alina felt something she'd never experienced before, complete and utter security. She was loved, protected, and valued for who she was rather than what she could provide. She was finally, truly free. The engagement ring arrived 2 weeks later, delivered by the same merchant who had brought Elena's father's threatening letter. But this time, Alina signed for the package with steady hands and a heart full of joy. The ring was simple, but beautiful, a single diamond, set in a delicate gold band that caught the light like captured fire. It's perfect, Alina breathed as Cade slipped it onto her finger. They were sitting on the front porch in the evening twilight, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. I wanted something that would remind you of your strength, Cade said, brushing a kiss across her knuckles. Diamonds are formed under pressure, but they emerge more beautiful and valuable than any other stone. Alina smiled at the sentiment. When did you become such a poet? When I fell in love with you, he replied simply. Love does strange things to a man. Mrs. Riley appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, it's about time you two made it official. I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you in the root cellar together until you came to your senses. Alina laughed. The sound, light, and free. We wanted to do things properly. Make sure we were both ready for this step. Properly. Mrs. Riley snorted. Child, you've been ready since the day you arrived. I could see it in your eyes when you looked at him. And Cade, well, that man's been walking around like he won the lottery for weeks now. Have not, Cade protested, but his grin belied his words. Have to. Just yesterday you were whistling while you mucked out the stalls. Nobody whistles during that particular chore, unless they're either drunk or in love. Mrs. Riley's expression softened. I'm happy for you both. Sarah would be too. Alina felt a bittersweet pang at the mention of Cade's sister. I wish I could have met her. I feel like I know her through all the stories you've told me. She's here in spirit, Mrs. Riley said gently. And she'd be proud to know her brother found love again. She always worried about him being alone after she was gone. They spent the evening planning their wedding, which would be a simple ceremony held at the ranch. Alina had no family to invite. Her parents had forfeited that right when they sold her, but she was discovering that family was about more than blood. The ranch hands had become her brothers, Mrs. Riley her surrogate mother, and Cade her everything. I want to be married in the meadow behind the house, Alina said, envisioning the scene. Where the wildflowers grow, and you can see the mountains. Sarah always said that would be the perfect place for a wedding, Cade agreed. She used to pick flowers there when she was little. Then it's settled. Alina squeezed his hand. A month from now, in the meadow. Just us and the people who matter. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Alina threw herself into learning every aspect of ranch management, determined to be a true partner to Cade in every sense of the word. She studied the ranch's finances, learned to identify different breeds of cattle, and even began practicing with a rifle under Jake's patient instruction. "You're a natural," Jake observed as Alina hit her target for the 5th time in a row. "Most folks can't shoot straight when they're starting out." "I never want to be helpless again," Alina replied, reloading with practiced motions. "I want to be able to protect my home and family." "Your family," Jake repeated, with a smile. "I like the sound of that." Alina did too. The word had taken on new meaning for her, not the people who shared her blood, but the people who chose to love and support her. The ranch hands had accepted her completely, treating her with the same respect and affection they showed Mrs. Riley. Even the townspeople had embraced her. Word of her engagement to Cade had spread quickly, and she found herself welcomed into the community with open arms. The women's auxiliary had insisted on throwing her a bridal shower, and the local seamstress had offered to make her wedding dress as a gift. "You're one of us now," Mrs. Henderson from the general store had explained. "Cade's good people, and anyone he loves is family to us." Alina had cried that night, overwhelmed by the kindness of virtual strangers. She'd spent so long believing she was worthless, expendable, that the outpouring of love and acceptance still caught her by surprise. "What's wrong?" Cade had asked, finding her in tears on the back porch. "Nothing's wrong," Alina had replied, wiping her eyes. "Everything's right. That's what's so overwhelming. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me this is all a mistake." "It's not a mistake," Cade had said firmly, pulling her into his arms. "You deserve every bit of happiness you're finding, and you're going to keep finding it for the rest of our lives together." Now, with just a week left before their wedding, Alina felt a peace she'd never experienced before. She was standing in their future bedroom, the master suite that she would share with Cade once they were married, hanging her wedding dress in the wardrobe. The dress was beautiful, made of cream-colored silk with delicate pearl buttons and lace trim. It wasn't elaborate or expensive, but it was made with love, and that made it precious to her. "Alina," Cade's voice came from the doorway. "May I come in?" She turned to find him standing hesitantly at the threshold. Even though they were engaged, he still respected the boundaries of propriety. It was just another sign of the fundamental decency that had drawn her to him from the beginning. "Of course," she said, smoothing the dress one last time before closing the wardrobe door. Cade entered the room, looking around with satisfaction. "I can't believe in a week you'll be sharing this room with me, sharing this life with me." "Having second thoughts," Alina teased, though her heart skipped a beat at the possibility. "Never," Cade replied emphatically. "I'm the luckiest man alive, and I know it. I just want to make sure you're happy. Really happy." Alina crossed the room to him, placing her hands on his chest. "Cade, I've never been happier in my life. A year ago, I thought my future was predetermined, that I'd always be at someone else's mercy, always afraid. Now I'm about to marry the man I love, in a place I love, surrounded by people who've become my family. How could I not be happy?" Cade's arms came around her, holding her close. "I love you, Alina, more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "And I can't wait to become your wife." As they stood there in the gathering dusk, Alina felt the last of her fears fade away. She was no longer the frightened girl who'd stood on an auction block, praying for salvation. She was a woman who'd found her strength, her purpose, and her home. And in just 1 week, she would officially become part of the family that had chosen to love her. Dawn broke clear and bright on Alina's wedding day, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed to promise nothing but happiness ahead. Alina woke in her small room for the last time, knowing that tonight she would sleep in the master bedroom as Cade's wife. Mrs. Riley appeared in her doorway with a breakfast tray, her face glowing with excitement. "Good morning, bride. I brought you some tea and toast. You'll need to keep your strength up for the day ahead." Alina sat up in bed, accepting the tray gratefully. "I can't believe it's finally here. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find this was all a dream." "Well, if it's a dream, we're all having it together," Mrs. Riley replied with a laugh. "And speaking of together, the ladies from town will be here in an hour to help you get ready. They're more excited about this wedding than you are, I think." Alina smiled, remembering how the women of the community had embraced her. "They've been so kind to me. I never expected to find such acceptance." "That's because you've got a good heart, child. People can sense that about you." Mrs. Riley bustled around the room, laying out Alina's undergarments and silk stockings. "Now, eat up. We've got a lot to do before this afternoon." The morning passed in a whirlwind of activity. The ladies from town arrived as promised, filling the house with chatter and laughter as they helped Alina prepare for her wedding. They styled her hair in an elaborate updo, weaving wildflowers throughout the dark strands. They applied subtle cosmetics to enhance her natural beauty, and they fussed over every detail of her appearance until she felt like a princess from a fairy tale. "You look absolutely radiant," Mrs. Patterson, the minister's wife, declared as they helped Alina into her wedding dress. "Cade's going to fall over when he sees you." Alina looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The frightened, desperate girl who'd been sold on an auction block had been replaced by someone confident and glowing with happiness. Her eyes sparkled with joy, and her smile was genuine and unguarded. "I feel different," she admitted. "Like I'm finally becoming who I was meant to be." "That's what love does," Mrs. Riley said softly. "It shows us the best version of ourselves." Downstairs, they could hear the sounds of preparation as the ranch hands set up chairs in the meadow and decorated the makeshift altar with more wildflowers. The minister had arrived from town, along with half the population who'd come to witness the ceremony. "Are you ready?" Mrs. Riley asked as they heard the first strains of music floating through the open window. Alina took a deep breath, feeling calm and certain. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." They made their way downstairs and out through the back door toward the meadow. Alina gasped when she saw the scene before her. The meadow had been transformed into something magical. Chairs were arranged in neat rows, filled with smiling faces. The altar was a simple wooden arch covered in trailing wildflowers and green vines. And standing beneath it, looking handsome in his best suit, was Cade. Their eyes met across the distance, and Alina felt her heart skip a beat. He looked at her as if she were the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and she felt that beauty radiating from within her. Since Alina had no father to walk her down the aisle, she'd asked Jake to do the honors. The gruff ranch hand had been surprisingly emotional when she'd made the request, clearing his throat several times before accepting. "Ready, little sister?" Jake asked, offering her his arm. Alina nodded, too overcome with emotion to speak. As they began their walk down the aisle, she was aware of the faces turned toward her, all friendly, all welcoming, all genuinely happy for her. These people had become her community, her support system, her chosen family. But her eyes were fixed on Cade, who stood waiting for her with love shining in his dark eyes. When Jake placed her hand in Cade's, Alina felt a jolt of electricity run through her. This was at the moment her new life truly began. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Cade Brennan and Alina Martinez in holy matrimony." Alina barely heard the traditional words of the ceremony. She was too lost in Cade's eyes, too overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. When it came time for their vows, Cade spoke first. "Alina," he said, his voice strong and clear, "a year ago, I thought I knew what my life would look like. I thought I'd spend my days working the ranch and my nights alone, carrying the weight of past regrets. Then you came into my life, and everything changed. You taught me that love isn't just about protecting someone, it's about believing in them, supporting their dreams, and building a future together. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by your side, through whatever challenges life may bring. You are my heart, my home, and my hope for tomorrow." Alina felt tears streaming down her face as she spoke her own vows. "Cade, when I stood on that auction block, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be anything more than someone else's property, someone else's burden. But you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You saw strength where I saw weakness, potential where I saw despair. You gave me not just a home, but a purpose. You showed me what real love looks like: patient, kind, and unconditional. I promise to love you with everything I have, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, and to build a life with you that honors the gift you've given me. You are my savior, my partner, and my eternal love. By the power vested in me by the state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Cade cupped Alina's face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears of joy. "Hello, Mrs. Brennan," he whispered. "Hello, husband," she whispered back. When their lips met in their first kiss, as husband and wife, Alina felt the last piece of her broken heart click into place. She was whole again, complete in a way she'd never thought possible. The frightened girl who'd been sold for a debt was gone forever, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and had found her place in the world. As they turned to face their guests, Alina saw nothing but love and acceptance in the faces before her. Mrs. Riley was crying openly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. The ranch hands were grinning from ear to ear. Even the townspeople who barely knew her were beaming with genuine happiness. "Ladies and gentlemen, the minister announced. I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cade Brennan. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as Cade and Alina made their way back down the aisle as husband and wife. As they reached the end of the aisle, Cade suddenly swept Alina up in his arms, carrying her toward the house amid laughter and well wishes. Where are you taking me? Alina laughed, holding onto his shoulders. Home, Cade replied simply. I'm taking you home, Mrs. Brennan, where you belong. As they crossed the threshold of the ranch house together, Alina felt a profound sense of completion. She was no longer a woman without a family, without a future. She was Mrs. Cade Brennan, mistress of the Double B Ranch, and she was finally, truly home. 5 years later, Alina stood in the same meadow where she'd married Cade, watching their 3-year-old daughter, Sarah, chase butterflies through the wildflowers. The little girl had her father's dark eyes and her mother's spirit, and she filled their home with laughter and joy every single day. Mama, look, Sarah called out, cupping her hands around a bright yellow butterfly. I caught one. Very good, sweetheart, Alina replied, resting her hand on her rounded belly, where their second child was growing. Now let it go so it can fly. Free. Sarah opened her hands, giggling with delight as the butterfly fluttered away. Free, like you, Mama. Alina's heart swelled with love and pride. Even at 3 years old, Sarah somehow understood the story of her mother's journey from captivity to freedom. Yes, darling. Free like Mama. Cade appeared beside them, slipping his arm around Alina's waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. How are my girls today? Perfect, Alina replied, leaning into his embrace. Absolutely perfect. It was true. Their life together had been everything Cade had promised and more. The ranch prospered under their joint management, and Alina had discovered a talent for business that complemented Cade's skills with the land and animals. They'd expanded their operation, adding a horse breeding program that had become renowned throughout the territory. But more than their professional success, it was their personal happiness that truly mattered. Alina had never imagined she could feel so secure, so loved, so valued. Cade treated her as his equal in every way, seeking her opinion on all major decisions and supporting her dreams with unwavering devotion. Mrs. Brennan, came a voice behind them. Alina turned to see a young woman approaching hesitantly. She was about Alina's age when she'd first arrived at the ranch, with the same haunted look in her eyes that Alina remembered from her own reflection. Yes, Alina replied gently, recognizing the signs of someone who'd been through trauma. I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard, that is, people in town said you might be able to help me. My name is Mary, and I had run away from a situation that wasn't safe. I have nowhere to go, and I was hoping. Alina's heart went out to the young woman immediately. Over the years, she and Cade had quietly helped several women escape difficult circumstances, offering them work and sanctuary until they could get back on their feet. It had become Alina's mission to provide for others what had been given to her a second chance. Of course we can help, Alina said warmly. Mrs. Riley could use assistance in the kitchen, and we have a spare room in the house. Would you like to come up and meet her? Mary's eyes filled with tears of relief. Oh, thank you. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to repay anything, Alina replied, echoing the words Cade had spoken to her so many years ago. Everyone deserves a chance at something better. As they walked toward the house, Alina caught Cade's eye. He smiled at her with the same love and admiration he'd shown her from the beginning, and she knew he was thinking the same thing she was, that their own happiness was made complete by their ability to help others find theirs. Mrs. Riley, now in her 70s but still spry, welcomed Mary with the same warmth she'd shown Alina years before. Soon the young woman was settled in the kitchen with a hot meal and a listening ear, beginning her own journey toward healing and hope. That evening, after Sarah had been tucked into bed, and Mary had been shown to her room, Alina and Cade sat on their front porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It was their favorite time of day, when the ranch was quiet and they could simply enjoy each other's company. Do you ever think about that day? Alina asked, her hand resting on her belly where their unborn child stood gently. The day you bought me. Every day, Cade replied, pulling her closer. It was the luckiest day of my life. Even though you paid $8,000 for a wife, Alina teased. Best investment I ever made, Cade said with a grin. Though I have to say, you've appreciated considerably since then. Alina laughed, the sound carrying across the peaceful evening air. I love you, Cade Brennan. More than I ever thought possible. I love you too, Alina, forever and always. As they sat together in comfortable silence, Alina reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She'd started as a frightened girl who believed she was worthless, sold by her own parents to pay a debt. But she'd found something she'd never expected: a man who saw her true value, a family who chose to love her, and a future filled with purpose and joy. The scars of her past would always be part of her story, but they no longer defined her. She was Alina Brennan, wife, mother, rancher, and advocate for women in need. She was valued, respected, and deeply loved. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Sarah's laughter drifted from her bedroom window, and Alina smiled. Her daughter would grow up knowing her worth, surrounded by love and support. The cycle of pain and abandonment that had defined Alina's early life would not be passed on to the next generation. Thank you, Alina whispered to the stars, to fate, to whatever force had brought Cade into her life that day at the auction. For what? Cade asked. For everything. For seeing something in me worth saving. For giving me a life beyond my wildest dreams. For loving me enough to set me free. Cade turned to face her, his eyes shining with emotion. Alina, you saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to heal and grow. Your strength, your courage, your capacity for love, that all came from inside you. We saved each other, said softly. You were lost too. Remember? Carrying guilt over Sarah, closed off from love. We found our way back to life together. Yes, Cade agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. We did. As they made their way inside for the night, Alina took one last look at the meadow where they'd married, where their daughter played, where they'd built their life together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others, new moments of joy and love. But tonight, she was simply grateful. Grateful for the man who'd paid double for her freedom and given her a love beyond price. Grateful for the family she'd found and the family she was creating. Grateful for the second chance that had become a lifetime of happiness. Alina Brennan was no longer the girl who'd been sold for a debt. She was a woman who'd found her true worth, not in what others were willing to pay for her, but in the love she gave and received freely. And that, she knew, was the most valuable thing of all. Author's note: this story explores themes of redemption, self-worth, and the transformative power of unconditional love. Alina's journey from a woman who believed she was worthless to one who recognized her true value mirrors the journey many people take in learning to love themselves. Cade's character represents the healing power of kindness and the importance of seeing people for who they truly are, rather than their circumstances. Together, they create a love story that celebrates the triumph of the human spirit over adversity, and the beautiful truth that everyone deserves to be loved and valued for who they are.